Imagine watching billions of dollars just vanish, literally evaporate into thin air. Well, that's exactly what happens when massive, seemingly invincible startups collapse. Welcome to this explainer here on Zak Wealth Files. I'm Zak, and our mission on this channel is simple: to make investing, wealth building, and personal finance accurate, actionable, and genuinely useful for you. Today, we're doing an autopsy on the anatomy of the billion-dollar startup collapse. We're going to see exactly how these massive corporate empires fall apart, and more importantly, we're going to extract a practical framework that you can use this week to evaluate any stock, investment, or even a startup job offer before you get burned.
$60 billion. Actually, to be totally accurate, based on the reporting, we are talking about a combined total somewhere north of $60 billion. That is the peak valuation of just 3 companies that was completely wiped out, destroyed in a matter of years from their highest point. I really want to anchor you to the sheer scale of this right away. We're not talking about a local mom and pop shop struggling here. We are talking about massive corporate empires just evaporating.
Now here's the part most people get completely wrong. These weren't isolated random events. The collapses of these giants all shared the exact same 4 red flags. And you know what the craziest part is? These warning signs were visible months, and often years, in advance, long before anyone outside the company had any clue how bad things really were. It's like a giant puzzle, and once you learn to spot these pieces, you'll start seeing this pattern everywhere.
Let's quickly set the stage with our 3 case studies so you can see them side by side. First up, WeWork. It was a shared office space company that hit a $47 billion private valuation before an attempted public offering exposed a completely unsustainable business model. Next, FTX. Widely seen at the time as this incredibly trustworthy crypto exchange, it reached a $32 billion peak before collapsing in mere days when reporting revealed customer funds were being misused. And then there's Theranos, a healthcare tech company that promised miracle blood tests from just a few drops of blood, peaking at $9 billion before investigations proved the tech just literally didn't work. 3 completely different industries, right? But underneath all the headlines, they had the exact same 4 warning signs.
In all 3 of these companies, we saw a highly charismatic founder operating with almost zero internal accountability or pushback. To really understand why this is such a huge problem, let's define a quick bit of jargon: corporate governance. Think of this as the steering wheel and the brakes of a company. It's the system of rules, practices, and independent board oversight that directs and controls a business. But in all 3 of our examples, this system was fundamentally broken. The boards of directors, the people whose literal job is to provide independent pushback, were widely reported to just be yes men, completely deferential to the founder.
The crucial point here is that decision-making was entirely concentrated in one person. You look at these boards and they were just filled with personal connections or people handpicked by the founder. Look, relying on one single person's judgment to be consistently right 100% of the time, with no structural checks and balances to catch them when they slip up, that is a massive vulnerability. It honestly doesn't even matter how talented or well-intentioned that founder might be. Structurally, it's a disaster waiting to happen.
Once a founder has that absolute control, the very next thing you usually see is an active resistance to showing real audited numbers to the public. We call this financial opacity. It's basically a consistent unwillingness to provide verifiable financial data. Think about it like this. Imagine you're buying a massive, expensive house, but the builder absolutely refuses to let the building inspectors check the foundation. They tell you, hey, it's perfectly fine, it's super innovative, but they won't let anyone actually verify it. That is financial opacity, and it's a glaring red flag.
Just look at how this played out in reality. Theranos was notoriously secretive, constantly hiding behind the excuse of trade secrets so they wouldn't have to show their math. WeWork dodged real transparency until they filed for their IPO. And once those actual numbers came out, they revealed a business that was way less profitable and far more chaotic than anyone thought. In FTX, their collapse showed that customer funds and company funds weren't even kept clearly separate. A normal, transparent audit would have caught that way earlier.
Now, fast growth isn't a crime, right? We all love growth, but a massive gap between public perception and underlying reality, that is entirely unsustainable. On one side, you have the public perception, massive valuations, endless press hype, glowing magazine covers. On the other side, you have verifiable reality, actual revenue, working tech, sustainable profit margins. In all 3 of our cases, the hype grew way faster than the concrete fundamentals could ever support. When growth outpaces checkable reality by that wide of a margin, a collapse is for sure looming. I want you to pay close attention to this one, because it is almost always the very first sign to appear, long before the financial slip or the growth stalls. In all three companies, there's heavily documented evidence that internal concerns were actively dismissed, minimized, or completely discouraged. We know this from investigative journalism, court records, and former employees. Skepticism wasn't seen as a helpful tool to improve things. It was treated as an enemy that needed to be buried. When a company systematically suppresses internal warnings instead of genuinely investigating them, the foundation is already rotting.
So, we've done the autopsy on these three giants, but here at Zak Wealth Files, we don't just dwell on the past. We need to pivot. How can you use this exact framework to protect your own money? Because I promise you, these 4 signs apply just as much to a company you've never heard of as they do to a $30 billion headline.
Now, before we lay out the actual steps, I need to give you a very honest, calm caveat. This explainer is for general educational purposes based on publicly reported facts. It is not personalized investment advice. Applying this framework doesn't guarantee you'll catch every bad company out there. Look, some frauds are incredibly sophisticated, and foresight is always harder than hindsight. All investing carries risk, and if you're making major financial decisions, you should always do thorough due diligence and consult a licensed professional.
Let's turn everything we've talked about into a practical, forward-looking strategy you can use right now. You might actually want to screenshot this, because this is your playbook. Step 1. Check for real board independence. Does the oversight team actually have teeth, or is it just the founder's buddies? Step 2. Watch how they respond to financial requests. Sure, competitive secrets exist, but a blanket refusal to show real numbers? Huge red flag. Step 3. Compare public valuation against concrete data, like actual revenue and profit, not just the hype. Step 4. Observe how they handle public criticism. Do they engage with legitimate scrutiny, or do they immediately dismiss and attack the critics? And finally, step 5. Look for combinations of these red flags, because trust me, they rarely travel alone.
And that actually brings us to the most critical takeaway of this whole explainer. One of these signs on its own, it might mean nothing, but the absolute deadliest combination is concentrated control paired with financial opacity. When you have a single founder calling all the shots and they absolutely refuse to let anyone verify the financial numbers, you need to run. That is the exact pattern of disaster, and it's shown up repeatedly in the biggest corporate collapses in recent history.
I'm going to leave you with this one thought to sum it all up. Clarity and trust beat excitement every single time. These companies sold massive excitement, but they severely lacked clarity and trust. And that numbers-first, reality-based breakdown is exactly what we build this channel around. If you found this framework helpful for your long-term wealth building, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss our next explainer. And hey, I'd love to hear from you down in the comments. Out of the 4 warning signs we covered today, which one do you think is the absolute easiest for a company to hide from the public? Think about it, let me know, and I will see you in the next explainer.